and still go back at 49?
They can go back to 49.
The only position they got is it's guaranteed. I hate to say it. Don't you think they can fix this thing?
They're getting money for that full-time teacher.
If they work at 49%, they get funded
How are you? Wait a minute, I just came from there and I went to Senate Finance too.
she didn't even come in here, her deal said, got the fish on it, we had to throw them out.
Yeah, they said they were doing something to that. You took care of
We
it.
had to count silence,
Well, I heard a lot of complaints about that and I just turned a deaf ear. Trying to get me a couple of fish because those folks back home
I asked them
here.
if they're gonna put a noise maker on a crossbow. Crossbow shoots towards there.
That's true. People were saying they didn't want to be little silencers and I didn't think about those or quiet.
You don't know if you're hitting it anyway.
We had a fella. Well, we did too, the guy, but it was mean-spirited, intentional all along. So anything you say about silencers or bows or
Several murders have been committed. They're not the same place the enemy does.
well, I appreciate you keeping it in there. You know, that started as a class project.
Yeah, he told us. Remember when he first brought this? I thought we did it. We did have a commission.
You did. Only reason I'm sitting down here is because I've got to go to help when they call me.
You're gonna stay here. You can't leave.
Yeah, and that was Municipal Association.
One seventeen, where you at? We really 117.
Yeah.
All right, if I can have your attention, we've got a sign-up sheet that's going to be up front. If anybody wants to sign up, we're going to hear 117, 175, and 176. How you? Okay, we're ready to get started. Before we begin, if Representative Hill will lead us in prayer.
Let us pray. Our dear kind Heavenly Fathers, we come to you with humble hearts, thanking you, Lord, for another beautiful day that you've given us here on this earth. We pray and ask, Father, that you lead and guide us in every decision that we make. And Lord, that it would be the best decision, Lord, that we could possibly make for thee and for the people. Lead and guide us in everything we do. We bow our unworthy heads and ask you, Father. It's in Jesus' name we pray and ask. Amen.
All right, I want to welcome everybody here today. We've got several bills that we need to go over. And the first order of business is that I need a motion to reconsider House Senate Bill 117. Representative Kirby.
Mr. Chairman, I move we reconsider Senate Bill 117.
All right, have a motion to have a second. All those in favor would say aye. Aye. Okay. Any opposed? Like sign. Okay. Ayes have it. All right, 117. That was a bill that was passed out of committee the other day, and then we found some information that needed to be corrected in the bill. And so you have a substitute bill before you, Senate Bill 117 sub. LC number is 431335S. And the substitute bill would amend, the substitute bill amended general provisions under the Public Retirement System Standard Law. It would prohibit any retirement system from enacting any law, rule, or regulation, resolution, or ordinance for credible service unless the individual is required to pay the full actuarial cost of the service granted. The provisions would not allow credit for service in a retirement system that a member accrues while would not apply to the credit for service in a retirement system that a member accrues while a contributing member of such system. The provision would not apply to or affect the Georgia Municipal Employees Benefit System or any local retirement system that is not a legislatively controlled retirement system. It would also authorize any retirement system affected by this bill to adopt a procedure for accepting payments for credible service. Such procedures would allow members to make equal payments over a period of time not to exceed 120 months. Finally, the bill would amend certain provisions under the Employee Retirement System, Teacher Retirement System, Legislative Retirement System, and Sheriff's Retirement Fund relating to the purchase of credible service. If this legislation is enacted, persons who become members of these retirement systems on or after July 1st, 2019 would be required to pay full actuarial costs for certain credible service that is already authorized for members. Persons who are members of such systems prior to July 1, 2019 would still be eligible to purchase such credible service in accordance with current laws. That was where we ran into a problem because we had several systems that had commitments to employees on how they would be able to buy service. And I want to call your attention on to the members of the committee, the areas of the bill where this occurs. On the first page, lines 17 and 18, which deals with the Peace Officers Annuity and Benefit Fund. We also have, as we move on through the bill, it gives areas, and it gives what the systems are allowing current members when they were hired to buy back time or buy time in the retirement system. And this has to do with, it could be people that have served in the military. And so we have gone through, and Legislative Council has found, he hopes, in all areas of the code where these people are mentioned. On lines 82 and 83, this pertains to people who are full-time graduate students It gives the requirements that they have to meet in order to be given any service credit in lines 64 through 81. And then they talk about, we put back in there the underlined section where it tells who can buy the time and who cannot. We go on over to lines 103. It talks about members who were previously eligible for membership in the public school employees retirement system, and it tells how they have been, how they are made eligible for membership in the teacher's retirement system. And also down at 120, it tells that we are telling who is eligible and who is not eligible for this. We have made sure that the military have not been left out of this, and on page all the way down from starting with section 4 at 123 down to line 159, we have given that and on page, and then line 149, we have said that they will have to, if they are hired after July of this year, that they will have to pay full actuarial cost. They are allowed on line 159 to buy up to 5 years of credible service for that. And I had a question about the 5-year credible service, and I would like some input from the committee, and also if there's anyone out there in the audience that would like to speak to this about the 5 years of credible service as to whether or not that is the right amount or if that is too much. If anyone from the committee has any comments on that. That is current law right now, but I'm just asking, does anyone have any comments about that? Anyone from the audience have a comment about that? Okay, well then I guess we'll leave it the way it is. Then finally, on lines 333 through 337, starting on line 333, a member may elect to make equal monthly payments. Now, back up to small letter C, it says a member may make a one-time payment of a full amount established by the retirement system administrator of this code section within 90 days and thereafter receive such credible service to which he or she is entitled. We get down to 133 and it says a member may elect to make equal monthly payments to be deducted from such member's earnable compensation over a period of 12, 24, 36, 48, 60, or 120 months to be paid according to a schedule established by the retirement system administrator, which would amortize the full actuarial cost of obtaining the credible service over the elected period of time. The amount of time, before I go any further, I would like to call on the author of the original bill. Senator Black, did you have, would you like to make a comment about the payment schedule that you have in the original bill?
Yeah, this was brought up, first off, a bill that a fellow senator had introduced for military service, and because these military people that with military history are prized state employees, and if they come out of the military, most likely they're not going to have enough money to buy 5 years of credible service. But these are employees that would be prime state employees, so if we provide an opportunity for them to to buy that service over a period of time, we feel like this would be a great recruiting tool to get these folks with some military training working for the state. And so that was the whole intent of putting this in there, was to entice more of these military people to take advantage of this.
Okay, all right, thank you. Mr. Potman, or would you like to make a comment on this, on these paying out this far, in, this long period of time? Do you have any comments about that, or concerns, or blessing, or? I'm sorry to put you on the spot here, but I think the committee would like to know whether or not 10 years is too long a period of time.
I don't have that concern, and the reason is because the way the bill is worded, we would be charging interest, so the plan would be made, if not exactly whole, there would be some interest coming in. Some of the time value of that payment would be offset by that interest payment.
All right, would you take a question?
Yes.
Number 7.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So if the person retires, I'm looking at the lines, I guess I'm trying to follow from lines 349 on down. So if they retire and they haven't made the full cost of the actuarial cost of the payments, then they only get credited for basically the service that they paid in.
That's correct.
That's correct. Okay, and then if you go down a little bit further, 354, if they leave for any other reason other than retirement or death, then they can make a one-time payment. If they do not make a payment, do we only give them back the money they put in and not the, I guess if I put in money over 8 years and then I leave, and then I guess there's interest that would have accumulated on that, or some kind of benefit that would accumulate that, does the plan keep that benefit and I only get back what I put in? Or do I get credited back that plus some type of interest rate?
It looks like it would be only that which you paid in directly.
So technically I could put in 8 years worth of money to try to get a benefit, and then I'm worse off than I had if I've never done it under this
Strongly
current.
encourage you, if you put in that much, I'd ask you to pay the last 2 years if at all possible.
Okay, but even if it's 5, I guess if I don't have the money, I don't have the money, I guess. But that's the way it's worded right now, that they would lose out that benefit.
There would be no interest.
There'd be no interest. Thank you.
Anyone else have a question? Thank you, sir.
Welcome.
Does anyone on the committee have a comment about the amount of time that is being allowed for payments to be made to purchase 5 years, up to 5 years? Go ahead.
I guess a follow-up question. Is that normal? I mean, what's the normal time that we allow?
Well, this is new language, so I don't think we've been giving any time.
That's correct. In the past, we've required a one-time payment for.
Yeah. Thank you. If that's the case, then I'm not, I think 10 years is long for both to come in as well as for the participant. I just hate for someone to make that 10-year commitment. If we get shortened it to something more reasonable, I think I'd be more comfortable with, but that's just a suggestion.
Okay. Well, are you putting that in the form of maybe an amendment in a minute?
I'm very flexible, so I'm very flexible, so I would rather, if the author is open to it, I don't want to, take apart his bill, but if anybody else is open to it, if 5 years seems to be a going number that we use a lot of times, I may be more comfortable with that than 10.
I guess it would depend on what it's going to cost you to buy in, whether or not you can afford to do that over a 5-year period or a 10-year period. Senator Black, do you have any additional comments you'd like to make on that?
First off, I'm going to have to call on legislative council. I thought we had this thing crafted so that if this person paid in for 8 years, then he would get the credible service prorated on what he paid in. Am I wrong? Is that not how we had it crafted?
Mr. Chairman, yes, that is correct if they're a vested member of the system. So if they had over 10 years, for example, in the ERS at that time, they would get as much as they paid for. If they weren't a vested member, then they would get the refund.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you.
And I think the reason for having an extended time is to make this a very attractive benefit for recruiting these, particularly these military people or people with military experience. Somebody's been in and just put in 4 years or put in, they're not retired from the military, but they've got military experience. I think you'll find that they have an extremely positive record with state employment. These are people that's got discipline. These are people that's accustomed to getting the job done. These are people that will stick with you. And these are the folks that I'd like to see the state be trying to hire.
Okay. Anyone else have any comments about the bill? Legislative Council, have I covered everything that was changed in the bill that we had problems with?
I believe so, and some of the retirement system administrators might be able to speak more clearly to it, but I believe we covered all the concerns and in terms of impairment of contract and federal law.
Okay. Do I have any administrators out there that would like to come up and speak that maybe didn't sign up to speak about any of the 117? Okay.
Appropriate time?
Representative Kirby.
If this is appropriate time, I move do pass.
I have a do pass motion. Do I have a second? Second. I have a motion and a second. Do I have any other discussion on this bill? Representative Wilkins, did you want to offer an amendment for that, or do you want to leave it the way it is? Okay, all right. Any other discussion? All right, seeing no discussion, all those in favor of passing substitute to 117 LC number 43-13335S, if you would, those in favor, if you would say aye. Aye. All opposed? Got one no. All right. All right. We're going on to 175, and last Tuesday we put 175 on the table. Representative Kirby.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we move 175 off the table.
I have moved. I have a second.
Second.
I have a move and a second. 175 is now off the table. In your folder, you have a substitute to 175. 175, in my opinion, is kind of like House Bill 109. It's kind of a work in progress, and we're trying to make sure that we get everything, or as close to everything, right as we can. I think that no matter what you do, there's always going to be one group that's going to be affected in a different way than what you intended, and you try to make sure that doesn't happen. The substitute that we're looking at is LC 43-1342S. This would take the place of the bill that was tabled. And I'd like to go over a couple of things in the bill that we've substituted. I'd like to get some public, let's see, we got a couple of people that want to come up and talk on 175, and any comment from the committee on this. First of all, on the first page, lines 15 and 16, and I'm going to have to ask Legislative Council on this, because after reading the substitute, if we look at line 15 and 16, it says, if accepted as provided in the code section, a beneficiary is restored to service as a teacher, he or she may elect, but I thought we were going to put in there as a earned or credited teacher.
So the first lines there are referring to if a teacher is restored to service, and that's basically if they exceed the 49%. There's an exception to that, which would be for substitutes and hourly classroom aides, and that's found in 147.3.127.1, which begins on line 98. For the the exemptions that were talked about last time, or rather the exceptions to this new requirement to pay employer contributions, those are found in lines 117 to 127. And in those lines, it accepts anyone employed pursuant to that 127.1, that's in line 120. Anyone employed by a RISA, which is line 121, and then line 122 to 127, up to 20 beneficiaries employed by a school system.
Okay, all right. So my question on that line 15 and 16, it reads correctly the way you intended it to do.
Yes.
Okay, all right. And then we go through, and a lot of this is current law, except where it is marked out, and it has to do with people that are coming back into service, not as a 49%, but as a full-time teacher. And then we get over to where we had a lot of heartburn. If you'll look at lines 103, Legislative Council, I have a question about line 103 where we've got substitute teacher.
Yes.
Weren't we supposed to put something in there about, it reads up there, notwithstanding anything in this chapter, to the contrary, a beneficiary may elect to return to service without becoming a contributing member of the retirement system as a classroom aide or substitute teacher. Now, are we classifying 49% as substitute teachers?
So
or do we need to say that outright in language?
The way the current law provides, and the director can correct me if I'm wrong, but the way the current law provides is that a substitute teacher is not covered by that 49% provision.
Okay.
So they're just not covered at all.
All right.
So with that, in this respect, the current law hasn't changed with respect to substitute teachers and classroom aides.
Okay.
Which are stricken in lines 54 to 60. Basically move those to its own code section.
Okay, so do we need to put language in there as a number 3 that 49% or less in an unearned position? If we're making I didn't see that anywhere else.
No, it's almost, you hit this classification as restored to service if you breach the 49%. So anyone that doesn't breach the 49% would not be restored to service.
Okay.
Under the provisions of this bill, those folks would now fall into the category where employer and employee contributions would be required to be made on their behalf.
Right.
Which is not the case, except for lines 119 through 127, which provide the exceptions to that rule.
Okay.
All
right. So we're making that exception instead of up here making a number 3. We're making it down there in that section that you just mentioned.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So then on lines. Let me find it. 121. We had a lot of heartburn about this last Tuesday, where the RISAs were being included, and it gave me a little heartburn too, because I know, being a former teacher, I know the role that RISAs play in, especially in the rural areas. But on line 121, we've carved out the RISAs as an exception to this, what the bill is calling for. That would be number 2, a regional education service agency. And then on line 22, had a great deal of heartburn from a lot of small systems that hire these 49% or less employees to do things other than taking the place of an earned teacher. So lines 122 to 127 bring this up. starting on line 122, up to 20 beneficiaries employed by a school system that has fewer than 3,300 enrolled students, provided, however, that any such beneficiary who is employed in or to perform the duties of an earned teacher position, which shall include any position for which the state funds are appropriated to a school system pursuant to the quality-based education formula. They shall not be accepted from the payments required pursuant to the subsection of this bill. Does anyone have any question about that right there? All right, let's see. What number are you down there? Okay, all right.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you.
Now, you're saying that a system smaller than 3,300 students with up to 49% people would not, what do you, repeat that for me?
We're saying that they can have up to 20 beneficiaries of the 49% without having to remit anything on teacher retirement unless 3,300 students, or 3,301 students or more.
I got you.
Or they are even in the smaller systems, if they're taking the place of an earned teacher.
Right. Follow-up question. Say my system has 8 teachers. They got 800 students. When this becomes in effect, the people that are already working on 49% would have to start paying, or is it just people who go in the 49% after, say, July the 1st, 2000?
We haven't grandfathered anybody in on this. Now, we'll certainly, if that's
Yeah.
something that you would like to bring up, and
it may not be the proper time, but I'm very much appreciate our teachers, but I very much represent all people, not just the teachers. I want to fix their retirement. I'd like to see something put in there that if they're already a 49%er, it would not affect them with a date something like next fall that would go into effect July the 1st, 2019.
Okay.
Thank you.
How about if I recognize you for that in just
That's
a few
fine.
minutes, okay?
That's fine.
To give a little further clarification, teachers are earned by the number of students and the courses that you offer, and we have a lot of smaller systems that are trying to offer courses that they normally would not be able to because they don't earn a full-time teacher, and so they might be trying to offer AP calculus or AP history or AP English. And in order to do that, they can hire somebody for 2 classes. That's not an earned position. That's a class that they're wanting to do. And so, Mr. Evans, would you agree with what I'm stating on this?
I would say that's a very good example of the application of that, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you very much. And the last thing that we wrote in, that we changed, was we made the effective date July 1 of 2021. Felt like that if there were any systems, that all systems ought to have the opportunity to get ready if they have to get ready, and that having it go into effect this year would be totally unacceptable. They're already making plans for this coming year. They've already, I don't know whether contract's gone out yet, Mr. Superintendent? No. Okay, not yet, but it won't be long, will it? No. So, now, that's what we've done. Mr. Register, you're down to speak if you'll come around and come to the podium.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee members. I won't take much of your time because I believe you've addressed my concerns from a small school system. A lot of small school systems like myself, we use a lot of 49%ers in positions that are not earned. For example, our school system earns 2.38 coaches. We can't run a school system on 2 coaches. So we have coaches on 49% that just coming out of local money. And we have other positions that just aren't earned, unfunded mandates like your RTI paperwork and stuff. We hire 49%ers just to come back and do paperwork. Not to mention we have some secretaries on 49%. But at any rate, thank you for making those changes. Y'all have a tough job. I remember when I became superintendent, the superintendent who I replaced said my #1 job was to make sure there was money in the bank at the end of the month to pay the teachers. And the second job was I was instructional leader of the system. Y'all have got a tremendous job. Chairman Benton and Senator Black, y'all's #1 job is to make sure there's money in the bank at the end of the month to pay all of the retired teachers in Georgia. And I appreciate all the work you're doing. Thank you.
All right. First name is Gretchen. I can't read the last name. Okay, Walton. Okay, I'm sorry. I read student writing for 30 years, and I give myself pretty good credit for being able to read. I just couldn't read. I couldn't read the L. I'm sorry. Excuse me.
I have good handwriting.
All
I
right.
teach our handwriting.
All right.
Good afternoon, Chairman Benton, committee members. I have reached out to you and shared some numbers with you about the impact on Cobb County School District. I'm the Legislative Affairs Officer. And while we appreciate what you're doing for the smaller districts, just because we're big doesn't mean we don't have to then expend the same amount of money proportionally. And so I do want to make sure that you knew that this would annually have a $2.5 million impact on our district. It also would increase the cost, that's 30 teachers, y'all. That's 30 teachers in classrooms, $2.5 million. It would also annually increase the cost of our 49% employees by 27%, which absolutely creates a disincentive to hire retirees. And I'm only speaking to the retirees, obviously, for the 49% employees. So 27% cost increase. We use those employees in a large district in particular to deal with the fact that we have 113 schools. And so a half allotment provides for flexibility in our schools that we would not have if we didn't have the 49% employees. We also use our veteran teachers to offer, just in the small school districts, some really specialized courses and bring their expertise to bear. They are definitely a treasure to our district, but with a disincentive of a 27% increase, it's going to be a big deal for us. So $2.5 million, it's a 27% increase. We really would like you to consider the impact on school districts. And we have already sent out our contracts for this year. They go out in February.
Okay.
Thank you.
Would you stand for some questions?
I'll do my best.
All right. Representative Kirby.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. $2.5 million, what percentage of your budget is that?
So our budget runs around, I don't know off the top of my head, I'm not going to stand here and do the math, but we spend 95% of our budget on employees. I believe it sits at, I'm going to missay it. I'm sorry, I don't want to answer it because I'm going to missay it. I can ask for you.
Okay.
Would you stand for a couple of more?
Of course, I'm going to ask the question for Representative Kirby too.
Okay. Of the teachers, 49% teachers, how many of them are taking the place of an earned teacher?
I don't know the answer to that question. What I can tell you is because it's a 49% employee, those jobs typically do go to retirees because those are the people who have the most flexible schedules. Mm-hmm. And so the reason in Cobb in particular that we would split a position is because we do have so many schools, right? So I've heard the argument that if we get rid of 49% employees, it will create one whole allotment and then be better for teachers. The issue for us is we have 113 schools. So putting one allotment here and not here, then when we can split it, we can actually serve 2 schools instead of 1. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And they can serve them with the actual need at hand, not have to fit someone into the mold of one allotment. I can get you the numbers, Chairman Benton.
Okay, while you're getting numbers, would you find out how many full-time teachers you're replacing with 49 percenters?
So I would definitely push back a little bit on the word replace. We're not replacing people. This is the way our half allotments go. So it is the way that, there's a science behind allotments, you probably remember. And so it's when an allotment falls based on the number of kids that it ends up being a 49% allotment. We don't typically split allotments at one school to make a 49% allotment. Does that make sense?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
All right. Got, who's number 10? Oh, okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just out of curiosity, how does y'all decide what to pay 49 percenters? And is there not a way to lower that to compensate for this cost going forward?
There is a way to lower it, yes.
So that would be an option for you?
It is an option.
Okay.
We pay them the way we pay, like, whatever, we're on pay scales.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever the pay scale is, so we could drop them down to an uncertified teacher status on the pay scale is what we've discussed.
One more. So if we put an exception in the bill that said that gave you the same, not necessarily the 20 exception, but gave you an exception that said that that we would not, 49 percenters would not penalize you unless they were taking the place of an earned teacher, which you are being paid for, would that make a difference?
I would need to see the language. Sorry, I'm going to be a lawyer
Well,
here. I would need to see the language.
I just gave you the language that
and I would need to talk to our CFO to be absolutely sure about how that would work.
Okay.
I don't want to say it wouldn't when I'm a little worried about how we would interpret what we mean by taking the place of.
Well, you earn a teacher, you earn an English teacher, but instead of hiring a full-time English teacher, you hire 249% teachers to take that place.
That we put at two different schools? So yeah, I would say then the way you're saying it,
Mm-hmm.
that would not fix the issue for us.
So all of your earned teachers are being slots are being taken by full-time teachers.
So the way we do allotments, an allotment can be split between schools, right? So it could be that we end up hiring a 49%er at Pope High School, and then we have a 49%er at Walton High School. And so that might be one earned slot, but we've put them at two schools that are, or let's make them an hour and 5 minutes apart, Lassiter High School and Pebblebrook High School. So in our county, that would mean that we would have two teachers who are that far apart.
Okay, all right, I understand.
Make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Representative Wilkerson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I was going to add to that. I think you've kind of summarized it. So I know in our situation, you may not have, similar to the small districts, you may not have enough for a class of calculus AB, but at one school you may have 5 students that the only option is for them to have a 49% teacher or go to another school in the middle of the day and come back.
Correct.
So by having that flexibility, you may have enough for 2 teachers, but really it's 1.5 at one school and half at another school. So you need that flexibility. Is that what I'm hearing from you?
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay, no more questions.
Okay.
David, you're not down to speak, but I'd like to hear from the largest school system in the state.
Just provided for us to give you input, and we appreciate the value of our fellow teachers and superintendents in smaller districts in our RESAs. In our situation, we have the 384 retirees, 291 are in certified positions or, Mr. Chairman, working in positions that are allotted through the QBE funding formula. So that's the number of teachers that we would have to be replaced. And we like the idea of the flexibility that you cited for larger systems on that, but that still would not really address our particular needs on that.
Okay. When are you in the same position that, that Ms. Walton's in, that you split a teacher and you send
Yes, sir.
send them half a day to one school
Well,
and put
it-
one at half a day and another one at
Depends on what the principal deems as a need for a teacher at their particular school. Each school has an allotted amount of teachers. We would find ourselves in a very similar place as our sister school district in Cobb. Yes, sir.
Okay. Anyone have any questions for Mr. McCluskey?
Well, and we appreciate this being a work in progress, Mr. Chairman.
Well, everything we do here is work in progress. Sometimes. You did have one question here. Oh, okay. Okay. Do I have anyone else sitting out there in the audience that would like to speak to 175? I'm a firm believer in allowing people to speak all they can, because we don't, although we're up here, there's a tremendous number of us that do not understand about fundings in larger systems. I, for one, didn't come from a large system, so I understand more Mr. Register's problems than I do a large system's problem. So this is going to continue to be a work in progress. I think to pass something out right now would be, I hesitate to use the word irresponsible, but I think that we would be doing a disservice to the legislative process to jump down this rabbit hole right now. So, Representative Kirby.
Mr. Chairman, I agree with you. We got questions that we still need answers to. We've got some time before this session ends, so I'd like to go ahead and make a motion that we table 175 for now.
Do I have a second on that motion? Have a motion and a second. Anybody have any comments before we vote on this? All those in favor, if you would, raise your hand. Any opposed? Okay. Senator Black, it's still a work in progress. Okay. We are to Senate Bill. All right, our posture on Senate Bill 176, it passed out of the committee last week, and after it was presented to the Rules Committee, a tremendous number of questions still remain about how this needs to be done. And so I asked that it be recommitted. This had to do with employee retirement, if I remember correctly. And so I'm looking for a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move we reconsider our action on Senate Bill 176.
Do I have a second on that motion? Second. I have a second also. Okay. Senator Black, would you come back up to the podium, walk around and come back up to the podium where we can all hear you pretty good? And do you need a copy of the bill?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right. I'm Mr. Hogan, you want to come up and sit up here with the rest of us? Oh, you know your fans at home want to see you. Okay. No, sir. I just saw you sitting over there and thought you didn't want to walk in front of us while we were talking. I was going to give you the opportunity to come up here so that the people of the town of, what is it, town of Jekyll Island, St. Simons, will see you up here. City of St. Simons. Okay, we'll see you up here. For those of you who don't know, that's a sore spot with Representative Hogan there, so, and we like to tease him about it. All right, Senator Black, if you would you go back over this bill for us again, and then I want to talk about some of the questions that were asked in the Rules Committee.
Okay. First off, let me tell you all this. The whole intent of this bill and the one we just you had a discussion having to do with the TRS is to try to come up with some small funding to boost our retirement systems. We've got over $30 billion in unfunded liability in our retirement systems. To get that in context, our bonded indebtedness is a little over $8 billion. We got right at 3 times as much, basically, exposure in our retirement systems as we have debt, and our Constitution limits the amount of bonds to 10% of our previous budget. So we're, I think, probably on some shaky ground with the unfunded liability we have on our retirement systems, and it's a big concern of mine. And I have proposed these bills and a couple of others to try to come up with just a little bit of funding here and a little bit of funding there, try to get things moving in the right direction. One of the things I must add is I had a friend say that, you know, that he had problems with this type of legislation because he was getting feedback from his district. Well, let me tell you, this is not personal with me. You vote your districts. I'm not offended by anybody, in other words, that votes his people, but be sure you know your people and how and they know what we're facing in this indebtedness that we've got hanging over our head. The whole concept we're faced here of trying to make some adjustments for these retirees that we're bringing back on is recognizing the fact that, first off, we try to generate a little more money. Second off, it is putting an additional financial responsibility on the local governments that's hiring these people, particularly the school boards, the state agencies that are hiring these ERS people. This is going to be some extra funds out of their pocket. The ERS bill particularly is pretty much for the state taking money out of one pocket and putting it over the other. We're going to have to fund these state agencies for this bill. Teacher system's a little bit different. We dealing with local funds, but the retirement systems will be getting an infusion of funds. But according to the actuaries, the money they're getting is not nearly as much as what these retirees are costing the folks. When I had an actuarial note on a bill that was introduced in the past, and I looked for it, but I wanted to bring it and couldn't find it, so I could compare it with it. Had to do with the teacher's retirement system. At one time, we had it set up where a teacher's retirement system could come back and work full time. This encourages people to go ahead and retire and start drawing on that retirement system, plus being able to pick up this extra earning. It's a big bonanza for them to do that. It is a huge draw on the retirement system when that's done. Let me point out this: a teacher that can come in and work 30 years and retire and draw 60% of their top 2 years' salary for the rest of their life. Or that teacher can teach on for another 10 years and draw 80% of that top 2 year salary. That teacher that retires at 30 is costing the retirement system more money than if they teach on and draw 80%. So this is one of the things that you need to get in your mind and think about this. The advantage of the retirement system for these people to teach on is an advantage is lost when we create things that gives some encouragement for them to go ahead and retire as soon as they can, and then go to work and draw their retirement plus their salary. This bill right here is structured strictly for the ERS. And so with that, I'll entertain any questions anyone might have.
Anyone have any questions for Senator Black? All right.
Off on purpose. Thank you.
I would never do that to you.
You said $30 billion unfunded mandate. Is that all retirement systems or just the ERS?
The big two is teachers' retirement system and ERS.
And that's a total of 30.
Right.
Teachers are 16 to 19 billion dollar shortfall, I think. Is that
teachers
correct?
is over 24.
24 of the 30 is teachers.
Right. And the teachers and the ERS is nearly 5, and then I just rounded off a little for these other systems that have some unfunded liability.
Yes, so, okay, I just wanted to clear that up. Thanks, sir.
You noticed he rounded up instead of down.
Politician.
Okay. Anyone else have a question for Senator Black? Okay, let me see. Is there anyone in here that did not sign up to speak on 176 that would like to speak on 176? Come on, folks. Need to get in on the fun here. Jim, I hate to ask you this. Would you come up here and talk on this just a minute? Yeah, you got something. I figured you would. Come on around where you can get to the podium.
Brought his notes with him. You know he's ready.
We're ready.
How can I help you?
I know you're from the government and you're here to help, right?
I'm here to help, that's right.
The way I read the bill is that Senator Black is wanting, if a retiree comes back and takes a position, then whatever agency he goes to work for is going to have to pay 6%. Well, actually, it's less. It's 1.25 employee,
yep.
And whatever the state is paying. I don't know what that percentage is right now.
For GSEPS members, it's 21.7, and for old plan, new plan, which would be most of the retirees, it's 24.7.
24, so it's right at 30%. Oh, no, 30.
About 25.
About 25%.
Change. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we've got a retired employee comes back, wants to work, and since the agency is a part of the state, then the state is going to have to pay that 25%.
Effectively.
So in essence, the state can either pay the 25% of the retirement, or in the appropriations they can figure that in and it just go straight in, correct?
Could be done either way. I guess when I read the bill, I would have assumed that it would be done similarly to how active member payroll is done through the agencies.
Okay. Representative Kirby.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As I read and listen and everything we've done here today, the effects of 175 and 176 are really not mutually exclusive, and that we would probably be better off taking these up as one comprehensive act, wouldn't we?
Well, here's the problem. We both handle how we look at rehired retirees currently a little bit differently. 49% rule versus our 1,040-hour rule. If you look at Senate Bill 176, there's a lot of strike-throughs and a lot of additions and all of that. Really, all of that was, I think, Legislative Council trying to reorganize the chapter a little bit better. there's very little that's actually changed in terms of the language between the two bills. Essentially, we're striking language that's on lines 75 through 77, which currently specifically states that no contributions would be made on account of the rehired retiree service by either employees or employers. And we're adding the language on lines basically 122 through 125, which is where it says the employers would have to pay the employee plus the employer contribution. Other than that, nothing else is happening. So to try to combine that with whatever is going on with the teachers' retirement system in Chapter 3, Section 3 under Title 47 would be, I think, a little bit complicated. But they could be put into the same bill, just kind of stacked together if you wanted to.
Okay.
I have one other question. How much does hiring 49% employees hurt the retirement system? Or does it help the retirement system?
So, just to be clear, we're talking about 1,040-hour employees
okay,
for us.
I'm sorry.
When we hire these folks, there's no liability being created.
Mm-hmm.
So from that standpoint, there's no harm being done. There's no contributions coming in, so there's no aid in that respect. Those who exceed the 1,040 have their benefits suspended for the remainder of the year, the calendar year. Are you basically asking me, we would be hiring full-time people if we couldn't hire the rehired retirees, presumably? It's really hard to say because, again, you're getting contributions for those people. So short-term benefit, longer-term, you will have a liability that you will have to pay for those people. If the contributions are being done correctly, that should come out in the wash. But over the long term, it's hard to say for sure.
Is there anything? Yeah, go ahead.
Let me say this. This bill right here has far less impact on the ERS than the 175 does on the TRS because we have teachers retiring at much younger ages than these people that's working was in. And in my judgment, in most of the situations, these departments are bringing these people back on because of their skill and expertise. I introduced this bill just in a sense of fairness. If we was going to do this to the teachers' retirement system, I said we ought to do the same thing for the ERS. I don't think this bill is going to have a whole lot of impact one way or the other.
I have some numbers, actually.
Okay.
So in calendar year 2018, we had about 1,365 rehired retirees. Total payroll paid to them was something like $22 million. So contributions that would have been paid on that are in the $5 to $6 million range for 2018.
The questions that were asked in the Rules Committee the other day, are there any other benefits that these employees have that these retired employees that are coming back that the state is paying for?
So speaking as an employer of 100 employees, we have 3 retired retirees.
Mm-hmm.
So they are all in the state health benefit plan, and when I rehire them, I have to pay a contribution for them.
Okay.
And I believe it's the same contribution that I pay for the active membership.
Okay.
That's not a new benefit for them, of course.
Okay. Right.
They're in the plan as a retiree.
All right. Anyone on the committee have a question? Go ahead.
So based on what you just said, you have someone come back and work that's retired, so they're getting their retirement check. They're working the 1040 hours, and they're getting a paycheck. And then as the employer, you're paying their part of their contribution to the state health benefit plan. Yeah. Is that state health benefit plan as an employee working part-time any different from the retiree state health benefit plan that covers them as retirees?
getting a little outside of my expertise, but I understand that they just remain as retired members under SHBP.
Okay. May I ask another question?
Yes.
So the benefit to hire a ERS, because I'm kind of like more familiar with that than I am with the teachers, but the benefit of hiring a retired ERS person is, of course, the experience. You are not having to pay into the retirement system. They're making more money because they're making half salary and their retirement check.
Well, yes, they're making whatever is being paid by the department plus their retirement check. That's correct.
Okay.
I will say this, though. As an employer, I look at it as I have to hire somebody, and I have to pay this retirement check. Whether I pay half salary plus the retirement check to one person, or I pay two different people, I'm still paying roughly a similar amount. So it kind of comes out in the wash to me. I value the experience. I go after these people because I need to fill a hole right now on usually a temporary basis, and that's the easiest way to do it.
That was exactly where I was going, so thank you. So my thinking is, instead of this bill, what makes most sense to help the ERS would be either extremely great investments that just help
We're
out.
already trying to do that. So
I know.
Got that one covered.
Or a bump of some kind from a pure appropriation to the system from the state coffers. Is that the only two ways that you could shore up the system other than this proposed bill?
And that's the two primary ways. We increase contributions or we have investment returns.
Thank you.
Representative Kirby.
All right, just want to make sure I'm following this, and getting back to what Senator Black said on some $6 billion unfunded liability out there. Whether you're doing the part-time or the full-time, and your contributions into the retirement system, we're still talking 5 to 6 million, where he was talking 6 billion. We're not really closing that gap on any of this if we're that far apart, are we?
I don't want to be flippant, but every little bit does help.
Well, I understand that, but that's
just to be clear, we're at about $4.25 billion.
Okay,
it's still a big number. I grant you.
Well, he rounded up a lot.
Representative Buckner.
I forgot one question and I have to ask it. Is there anything in this bill that would help the ERS retirees get to a COLA?
Not directly, no.
I
mean, a little bit higher contribution ultimately leads to a little bit higher funded status. So from that standpoint, improving the financial health of the system does get us incrementally closer, yes.
But not fast.
Right.
Thank you.
Any other questions for these two gentlemen? All right. At the proper time, the chair will entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I would like to make a request that these two bills move together.
All right. In that case, then we're going to need to table 175
I
then.
would be comfortable with that.
Author has requested that the bill be tabled.
176.
I'm sorry?
176.
176.
I'll make a motion with table.
Do I have a second? Have a motion and a second. Anybody have any more discussion on that?
Could these bills be put into like a special, not study committee in the sense of the regular study committees, but like a committee where we actually study it and look at it when we come back and do like the actuarial day?
I'm fixing to get to that, but if you would like to volunteer to be on that special committee, we'll just jump right on. Y'all heard her on that, so.
It just seems like it needs to be more of a discussion
Oh,
and
yeah.
more
Yeah.
conversation. And
We need to do some more discussion on 175 and 109.
I'll be glad to help.
I appreciate that so much. And don't everybody raise your hand at one time to volunteer to be with her.
Yeah, I'm not doing this by myself.
Okay, we have a motion to table and a second. All those in favor, if you would, raise your hand. All those opposed, like sign. Okay, before we adjourn, a couple of announcements about the rest of the time, and I know y'all are really disappointed that we're coming to the end, but we have right now 11 bills that we need to hear that would go to actuarial study. And we have several members that drive quite a long ways to come to Atlanta. And so what I am looking at right now is our regular meeting time is next Tuesday at 2 o'clock. Right now I am going to schedule a meeting for next Tuesday at 2 o'clock to start going over these actuarial bills. If the session runs long on Tuesday, we will meet on Wednesday morning, which is a committee day. And that meeting will be at 11 o'clock in this room. We already have the room scheduled. If we don't get finished with the bills to go to actuarial study, then we will schedule a date after we adjourn to finish up. I am hoping that we can get them all done in a 2-hour period that we have the room. Anyone on the committee have any comment about that? I am trying to save you some time having to come back up here, all of you. And I have a feeling that there will be one more bill introduced on Thursday that will go into this total of 12. And so with that, and does anyone in the audience have a comment about that? Next Tuesday will only be the bills for actuarial study. Nothing else will be taken up. So the large systems and the small school systems can breathe a sigh of relief until we get back together. So hopefully over the summer we will get some work done and be able to present some bills that are what I think are good pieces of legislation. With that, appreciate y'all coming today. We are adjourned. Because if we did it the other way, we had to make an amendment. We had to combine two bills. And the reason we did that, we've already passed yours. Well, see, we had his was supposed to be there too.